Thankfully, the twisted wreckage wasn't a smoldering fire. The few bullet holes in the fuselage told the tale all too well. A lucky 3 bullets from someone who had shot at the aircraft had caused its fuel supply to drain all over the Pacific, crashing them here into the sand just on the edge of a thick, lush forest that surrounded the ancient, crumbling mansion at the base of the mountain. A large groove in the sand inward from the incoming tide would eventually kiss the tail of the end of the aircraft. The deep blue of the Pacific surrounded him, just a few shades darker than the cloudless sky above. The lush forest reached upwards towards the sky, towering over the small twin-engined Cessna that had crashed in front of it. The plane was not going to fly again. That much was for certain. One wing had been sheared off in the crash. The good wing's prop had chopped up the sandy surf on its way towards its final resting place. Jason stood on the sandy shore, staring at the wreckage again, this time not in disbelief or despair like he and his wife had done just hours prior. His eyes were scanning the wreckage, searching for any usable items, anything that could be good for survival, or at least put up a defense. A last stand. "By my estimation," he heard Sarah say over his shoulder, "we have about 36 hours before they find us." "They'll get the Grail, they'll get both of us, and one of us will talk, which means our employer will be dead in perhaps a week and a half." Jason stared at the wreckage as he spoke, his brain still brewing, as he called it, thinking of a plan. Sarah chuckled a bit. "Well, babe, you sure know how to make a girl feel special on her second honeymoon." Jason turned around with a grin of his own. "Hey, I've kept my promise. This is somewhere tropical." Sarah stepped forward and hugged him gingerly, being careful of his injured arm. Jason suppressed a wince as she accidentally rubbed against the splintered arm. "I figured you meant someplace like Hawaii," she said softly. He smiled and looked down at her brown eyes. "What would make you think that?" "Mostly because of the 2 tickets in the hotel room you charged to a credit card for Hawaii. Plus you told your mom when you dropped off the kids that we would be in Hawaii," she replied with a sardonic grin. "That was just to throw you off," Jason grinned back. "I really wanted to take you here, to this tropical, beautiful, abandoned death trap with villains hot on our heels for a dumb cup." "It's not just a dumb cup." Sarah's tone turned serious for a moment. She was always serious when she was talking about artifacts, art, and culture. "I know, I'm sorry. It was a bad joke." Jason turned and held her close for a moment. A soft smile played on his face temporarily. "If you want to make it up to me, you could tell me you have a plan to escape this island and get back to our honeymoon," Sarah replied. Jason turned towards back the wreckage. They had a total of 4 grenades left. Less than 100 rounds of ammunition. That much he was certain. His arm was definitely broken. He was certain of that, too. Thankfully, the fracture wasn't a compound fracture, but he still wasn't going to be able to carry much weight. That left only Sarah to do the heavy lifting, and that was not going to work. "So by now, the transponder has gone off in the black box, and they have our exact GPS location," Jason said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah, or at least the location of the plane," Sarah replied. "Perhaps we could use this to our advantage," Jason said, bringing his good hand up to his chin to rub it thoughtfully the way he did when he was lost in thought. "Plan coming together?" Sarah asked. "Well, it's no Hannibal, but I believe I have an idea of how we can survive this," he said, starting towards the plane. "What are we going to do?" Sarah asked as she followed him. "First, we're going to get our supplies. We got a long day tomorrow and a long night tonight, so we'd better get started." He pulled the door to the plane open. It creaked as it swung, but gave no resistance. The windshield was shattered when it struck the tree that had stopped it. The interior was not nearly as bad as he feared. He grabbed onto the handhold near the door and climbed upwards, boosting himself towards the co-pilot seat. Grass was strewn all over the floor, but the weapons locker behind the cockpit was relatively untouched. "Thank God for small favors," he mumbled as he unlocked it and grabbed a pistol. "Hey, Jason!" Sarah shouted to bring him out of his reverie. He looked down at his wife, still on the ground. "You mind telling me the plan so we can go ahead and start preparing?" "Yes, right," he said, pulling out an AR-15. "By my estimation, we have about 50 rounds left over 2 magazines, and about 36 rounds left in the pistol and just as many mags. I figure we're going to need all of them." He climbed down gingerly out of the plane, then turned towards the woods. "There's a mansion somewhere up there, near the base of that small mountain. We're going to have to find it." He started to turn back towards the plane and walk towards the cockpit again, almost as if an idea had just struck him. "Oh, and we're going to need the transponder." Sarah stared at him for a moment. "I don't get this. Won't they see the plane sitting on the beach?" Jason grinned broadly. "I'm counting on them seeing it."